This week on the Eldritch Lorecast.
Meat, fat, and salt.
That was my nickname in high school.
20 new monsters
Go
in
ahead.
it.
I don't listen to you anyway, Ben. It's fine.
You got got. Go ahead.
I wonder if it burns like Divine Smite.
Ooh.
What's of October? That'll be fun. That'll be good. Don't mind the clanging and banging in the background if you can hear that. It's very normal noises.
Is the stuff that comes out of an elephant's trunk breath?
Rescue me here, because last time we talked about Pathfinder.
Save me.
All that and more right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Eldritch Lorecast, the 101st episode of the #1 tabletop RPG podcast in all the realms. That's right. I stopped playing Baldur's Gate 3 just to come here and record this podcast. My name is Ben Byrne, and I am joined, as always, by Dael Kingsmill, Shawn Merwin, and this week, Omar Najam sitting in for Joey Hake. Thank you for joining us, Omar.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, let that excitement sizzle as I rapid fire questions at you immediately. Starting with acid breath, poison breath, fire breath, lightning breath, ice breath, thunder breath, a breath full of insects. What is your favorite draconic breath weapon? What just seems the most epic to you?
I am strictly a lightning dude because a lot of the attacks are very cool, very impressive. They do a lot of damage. They make you do some fun saves. But the image of lightning in nature, like I feel like in the 90s, they were like, wait a second, we solved something where it's not just lightning coming down, but also there's lightning coming up. So the idea of a dragonborn opening their mouth and blasting out lightning, but then pulling some lightning from the target, that's a really righteous visual image. And so I think that's really cool. Also, it's just you go into a fantasy game and you're like, what can I do? And someone's like, you can literally spit lightning. That's a great answer.
Ever since I played, I want to say it was Oblivion, and they changed the way the lightning spell worked, and it was just like this shock of lightning with a really powerful sound effect. I was just like, that feels powerful to me. So I 100% agree. Dael Kingsmill, lightning breath, fire breath, insects, etc., or other.
I am the same. If we're picking from the standard set of answers, I think I would have to say lightning. Fire does come in a close second. But I mean, if we're including unconventional options like thunder or insects, at that point, I feel like I should be allowed to have Hyper Beam from Pokemon. That's my answer. That's the best dragon breath. Gyarados can cast it. Great.
There you go. It's official. Hyper Beam. The best dragon breath, unless Shawn Merwin, you have a different take.
See, you changed the question, Ben Byrne. You changed it.
Did I?
In the run sheet, it didn't say draconic. It just said breath weapon. And so I had the question, is the stuff that comes out of an elephant's trunk breath? If so...
what a horrible thing to ponder.
If so, the best breath weapon ever is the Hollyphant's breath weapon called, and let me see if I can remember this, the Trumpet of Sparkles. So from out of the Hollyphant's trunk comes sparkles, which do radiant damage.
Incredible.
Not only does it do radiant damage, but if you're an evil creature, you're at disadvantage on your saving throw. If you're a good creature, you're immune to that damage. Now, that's the best thing ever. And in Descent into Avernus, you have a Hollyphant that's with you that you get to escort down into Avernus, and sort of Lulu is the Hollyphant's name, and Lulu is sort of the impetus of the whole plot. And so getting to work on that and getting to play around with that sort of magic and that sort of fun was an incredible experience that I will never forget.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I did change the question. That is a very valid answer. And setting me up perfectly, speaking of descending into places you probably shouldn't, such as Avernus, you probably also shouldn't journey beneath Phandelver, as is being highlighted in the... I was actually going to transition to Baldur's Gate then, but then I read the run sheet. I was like, oh no, that's actually the wrong transition, so I had to improvise. Anyway.
We didn't even notice, Ben. We didn't even notice.
Excellent. I shouldn't have said anything. Phandelver and Below is just about out, I think. I think anyone who has pre-ordered digitally through D&D Beyond actually has access to it either probably tomorrow, US time.
Oh.
I don't know if it's unlocked our time, Australia, because it's the 5th currently where I am seated.
I think they usually make us wait.
Oh, man, they always make us wait. 19th we will be waiting for if you did not pre-order digitally on D&D Beyond. But anyway, has anybody had a chance to take a look at it or seen the previews for it? Mind Flayers are back, baby! What do we think? Are we excited?
This is one of the few things that I'm very excited about. I am so looking forward to this. And I have not been looking at preview videos. I don't want anything to do with spoiling this. I want to unfiltered, unadulterated, right into my eye holes and into my neurons. And I want to see how this is. I don't want to be spoiled or have anyone give me their opinions on it. I'll have my own opinions. Thank you.
Oh, whoopsie daisy. All right. Well,
okay, everyone look away from Shawn while we give our opinions.
Well, included in this, which I'm sure you wouldn't be spoiled on, Shawn, is the original Lost Mines of Phandelver adventure, which we kind of knew originally, but they've given a little bit more detail about how they've adjusted a couple things. It's largely the same. Couple of non-player characters might have changed mildly, but they've made it very clear in the adventure where the old content kind of stops and the new content begins, so that if you've played Lost Mines of Phandelver, you can choose whether you want to do it again or just pick up straight from where you left off. I have to assume, Omar, Dael, you've played Lost Mines of Phandelver. It is the starter adventure as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we both have.
Dael.
We both have. We've both played like the introductory game that when my home game was popping off like a year ago, that was the one we leapt into. We've both done it.
Close enough. You've done the Goblin Cave.
Look, I've seen a lot of things from Phandelver. I feel like I get the gist.
Okay. Do you like the gist? Do you?
Yeah, sure. Seems a little long for a starter for me. But you know, it's yeah, seems good.
Omar, how did those early sessions of your home game go with Lost Mines?
They were an absolute blast. My fellow players did want to keep like recruiting every NPC that we ran into, which was really great. And so our DM did let us stop to print out pamphlets. And it was a really fun flavor on the adventure to kind of treat it a little bit also like a recruiting mission. So I highly recommend if you're looking for sort of a side quest or an additional layer on top, maybe try that. Keeping in mind that not all the NPCs are very friendly.
Well, yeah, I guess, I don't know. Get it on the 19th because I kind of don't want to spoil anymore for Shawn. So 20 new monsters in
ahead.
it.
I don't listen to you anyway, then. It's fine.
You got got.
All right. Well, just for that, the thing I do find interesting about what's been said about the creative team behind this is that Lost Mines of Phandelver, one of the articles I was reading kind of attributed its success to being a relatively family-friendly starter adventure. You know, you can make it dark if you did back in the day, or you want to, or you know, it does have a kind of classic D&D vibe to it, right down to the villain being the spider. I'm the spider. Anyway, that's how I imagined he talked.
Ben hates the bad guy named the Spider. He's talked about it so many times, and I think that it's a perfectly fine villain name.
It just reminds me of the Wild Wild West. That's why, is because that dude's whole thing was spiders as well. But then they've talked about the back half of the adventure. Once it starts to get into that cosmic horror style stuff, it is definitely not family friendly, and it is trying to hit a vibe, and I am into it.
Yeah. What I like about
what a
it,
surprise.
No.
Go ahead, Shawn.
What I like about that is people who played the original can see sort of a starter adventure and how normal the progression of a campaign can be. And then you come back to it 10 years later and you can see how other adventure writers will take something that's already there and turn it into something new, something different, and hopefully draw up on those earlier plots to make a campaign, and you can really learn from that as a designer, as a game master, if you pay attention and think it through.
Hell yeah. Also, I am excited just to see more aberrations. I just think that there's a lot of juice left in aberrations. I'm excited to see what they do with them.
Yeah, I agree. I love. I watched a Lovecraft documentary on YouTube like years ago now, but I was just all about aberrations for a hot minute there after watching that, and I 100% agree. What's it called on Netflix? The Cabinet of Curiosities, like Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Yeah. Look, not every episode's a banger, I have to admit, but some of them are really good if you want to get inspired for horror-themed, sort of aberrant, cosmic horror games of D&D, which you might need on the 19th of September.
I didn't even think, though, about the timing for this is probably pretty perfect for Halloween-y times. It'll come out now. DMs can prep stuff. You can play through it over the course of October. That'll be fun. That'll be good. Don't mind the clanging and banging in the background if you can hear that. It's very normal noises. Don't worry about it. No one's chained up in the basement. Everything's fine.
Speaking of spooky. Speaking of spooky things, you are not seeing a ghost. They have reprinted the Baldur's Gate Gazetteer out of
I thought
Descent
that was going to be
into
a comment about how pale I was for a hot second.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'd go that far. That seems a bit mean. Baldur's Gate Gazetteer is now free on D&D Beyond. If you want to go purchase that, helps you run your games in Baldur's Gate if you've been playing the video game and want more of that in your home game. And they've reprinted it from Avernus, I think. I don't know. I kind of was using this as an opener to talk about Baldur's Gate now that I've started playing it, but no one else here has. So I guess I'm on my own there.
What's your favorite part?
Are you having fun, Ben?
Yeah, we can rapid fire questions to you.
You know, Baldur's Gate going through my specific filter of how I run D&D has been a fascinating experience because the comedy of Baldur's Gate hits me in a way that definitely makes me chuckle and I enjoy, but does not reflect my typical D&D experience in the way that I think the game is trying to reflect a lot of tables' typical D&D experience. I don't want to give anything away, especially because it's only just released on consoles, so I don't want to give any gags away or anything, but just kind of like that slightly slapsticky sense of humor that D&D can have, especially if you fail a check or you fail to notice something, and then the DM's like, oh, okay, well, this guy like falls over his feet now, and you know, comedy ensues, is not the way I tend to play the game. Like, and now I don't do crit fails because I can't be bothered thinking up something every time somebody rolls a natural one. But also because it keeps the game feeling a bit more like real world or maybe not real world, but grounded in a sense. And so it's just, it's fascinating watching where they're really trying to make it feel like a D&D game and where that comes up. It doesn't clash necessarily, but comes up against it being a video game specifically.
Did you see those people online who are saying like, hey, I've been really enjoying Baldur's Gate 3, and I was wondering what system people would recommend to play a tabletop RPG version?
Lasers and feelings.
That's the answer. My brother asked me, he was like, hey, are you going to play Baldur's Gate? I was like, yeah, but I'm not usually a fan of like turn-based stuff in games. I like to be a bit more in the action when I'm playing a video game. He's like, yeah, the combat can be pretty hard, man. Like you might have to, it might take a while for you to wrap your head around it. I was like, I think I'll be all right. I think I'll get it pretty quickly. And largely it's 5e. Yeah. Rescue me here. Because last time we talked about Pathfinder.
Save me.
Speaking of being in trouble for things. Pathfinder have 2 new classes in playtest at the moment, the Animist and the Exemplar. From my reading, the Animist is someone who uses apparitions, spirits who share power with them in exchange for being kind of these apparitions kind of doing their bidding in the material world, in the physical world. It sounds a bit warlocky. It sounds kind of undeady, but I actually think, like, going off the art and reading a bit deeper into it, it's more about like nature spirits. It's almost got a druidic. So
animism is a mode of understanding, sort of religion, question mark, spiritualism, where rather than having a deity or like a pantheon of gods, it's the concept that the whole world, everything in the world, has a spirit and a sort of an identity of its own and a will of its own. So you see it a lot in, for example, Australian Aboriginal cultures, sure, or Indigenous cultures across the world, or I don't know, things like, those ideas that in Japan, like umbrellas have spirits, and if you lose your umbrella, it becomes that whole thing. It all kind of ties into this concept of animism. So I am going to be interested to see how they approach that.
Is it going to be something where, because I was trying to do a bit of research and I could only find only so much until diving into the actual stuff. But will it be something, I know in Pathfinder 2 that with certain warlock setups, if you lose yourself, you can be taken over, and that your GM can start to run and do a couple of your moves for you or make certain decisions for you. Is that going to be cooked into this? Do we know?
I love that because you played one warlock one time in a convention one shot, and you're like, well.
In philosophy how they're like, all geese are white or all swans are white until you see a black swan, and then you're like, so you can nullify that statement. This is sort of a flip on that, and using the knowledge that I have.
It's so nice having someone else that Dael can target for an episode.
And also, okay, in all fairness too, really quick for context, also Dael was the one who was researching this while I was driving at 5 a.m. down to San Diego. So you actually know more about this than I do.
Have you played much Pathfinder before? Because between us all, we're going to be able to put the context together. Shawn, you were muted.
I was. It's probably a good thing.
No, please repeat for the rest of us.
I was going to say, you know much more than I do about this, and you can't even put a number on it because I know 0, and you can't go times 0. So infinitely more than I do. So good job.
Good job,
we
Dael.
need to seem knowledgeable. We're going to get in trouble with the Pathfinder people again. Dael, you take over.
I'm pretty sure that he is right, that is a thing, that there is a mechanic baked into already existing Pathfinder 2 classes where your character can be taken over by, say, your warlock patron. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this. You were right.
Yeah, I am right, but only because you were the one who read it. You're right. If I'm wrong, it's because you're wrong. So we're both in this together. So we have to have each other's backs now. Any claim we make
is correct, and no one can question us. I believe that mechanic does already exist, where it's like, well, I mean, if this happens, then your patron or whoever takes over, and the DM is now in control of your character. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that mechanic carry over, and for them to be just kind of making use of that in other new classes, because I mean, would be pretty wild to design a whole thing and then be like, I guess we'll stop there and never use it again.
There's a lot of really good...
Some of my own work when I say that.
There's a lot of really good... We're ending the action in Pathfinder 2 that I like, where you can do a big move once you've built up to it, that you're just like, you know what, actually, I'm going to wreck the entire cave, and anyone around me, including my allies, will not survive this. But it'll be a really good end to the story. And so I'm really curious to see sort of where this starts, but also where this goes and where this class is sort of building up to, because I feel like it can get pretty wild and fun and wacky. And I don't know. Next time I play Pathfinder, I might jump into this one because it looks pretty good.
I think it's interesting because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that this class is coming out in connection with an adventure that they're doing. Is that right? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. So So the second class, just quickly, the Exemplar is also coming out, which is kind of inspired by demigods like Maui or Heracles, or kind of a character like that from somewhere in mythology. They're kind of all over the shop, and both of these are connected to War of the Immortals, which is a multi-product event that's coming in 2024. Which I suppose, just to contextualize it for myself, 5e have kind of done across at least the early to mid years of 5th edition before they started cracking into other settings. But it's kind of cool to hear, like, it almost sounds like a comic event, like, Crisis on Infinite Earths or something.
It has that vibe about it. And it's like simultaneously, it's very exciting. I think it's very cool to be like, we're making new classes to play as. But at the same time, because, rather than, getting largely with Wizards of the Coast products, you'll get like, here's a background, here's a feat. Every now and then you get a subclass or two when it's attached to a specific setting or a specific adventure. But so this is really, really exciting to see it kind of be sort of such a broad scope of new things to try out. But at the same time, I played Pathfinder 1, and I remember how many classes they ended up with and how confusing it was. So I am a little bit trepidatious in that regard, but I don't know. It is. I am kind of caught in the hype of that sort of comic event feel.
Well, that's what I'm kind of curious about. Is it's really hard, speaking in a 5e context, to create a new class that doesn't just feel like it could or should be a subclass of something else, or isn't already even though you're designing new mechanics, thematically it kind of is already covered by, this other class. Is an animist a warlock? Like, could it in 5e just be covered by a warlock subclass? It I was about to say it sounds very Pact of the Fae, but I think that's maybe a misunderstanding of animism, generally speaking. But
I mean, we've yet to see how they've understood animism.
That's true.
Let's keep in mind.
I mean, look, if you are a Pathfinder player in the chat because the rules are out there, they've got like a play test out there that's available through the Paizo website. It's also available on Demiplane. You can build the character using these classes in Demiplane, which is kind of cool. So if you're a Pathfinder player who kind of has insight into these mechanics, please do let us know in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this later. But on concept alone, I have to say, these sound like cool classes that definitely thematically define themselves from my understanding of the 5th edition classes. I suppose I can't compare them to the Pathfinder ones necessarily, although I know there's a bit of crossover there.
I think it's interesting that they're at least tying it to this theme, because obviously War of the Immortals, you have the gods, you have animism if it is one god that's within everything, plus these other gods. And someone in the chat said one of the 20 core gods will die. So they're making this not just here's 2 new classes, but these 2 new classes are part of this ongoing story. So good on them. They obviously need to do something to grab attention from the new game that's coming in 2024 for Wizards. And we know that Paizo knows how to make great adventures and, capitalize on every business opportunity. So hopefully they are bringing all of this together in a way that will be pleasing to all the fans who partake of the Pathfinder.
I do want to say as well that as someone who has not delved deeply into Pathfinder 2, I will throw out there, Pathfinder historically has written adventures that I have loved. And I have, what's this giggle? What is that?
I don't know why you're attacking Shawn like this. It's unnecessary.
I'm excited to see what they do with new adventures, especially if they build them up to be events like this, because when I go reaching for a pre-written adventure, often it is something that has come through Pathfinder. Curse of the Crimson Throne, I talk about fairly frequently. I talk about Hollow's Last Hope, both great Pathfinder adventures. So I'm excited to see kind of the stuff that they come up with. Also, shout out to Rakema Delphilus in chat, who keeps saying things that Ben says as he says them. It's very impressive. It's happened like 3 times.
We haven't seen them in the same room at the same time, which is so interesting.
Yeah. I'm a master at touch typing. I don't need to look at the keyboard at all. Here's a general kind of Pathfinder question which occurs to me because, even though there was kind of an arc through the 5e adventures from Rise of Tiamat to Storm King's Thunder to Tomb of Annihilation, there might have even been some links, I'm not sure, in Curse of Strahd. But I found it really frustrating reading Tomb of Annihilation. It's like, yeah, these frost giants are here and they're looking for this guy. And it's like, oh, really? What happens if the party go and investigate that? Buy this other book and you'll find out. And I'm like, okay. But I guess that's cool that there's some interconnectivity there. But it feels very background. It's like you don't really need to know it if you don't want to run those adventures connectedly. How Galarian is Pathfinder in terms of the mechanics and the classes that you play, or how open is it to just throwing it into your own setting?
I would say it's fairly open. The Galarian stuff really most prominently, and Pathfinder stands, correct me in the comments, I would say it most strongly comes out, at least in first edition, via the clerics, because you you get the list of gods and they specifically are tied to domains. So it has that domainy flair, but without being separated from the gods in the way that 5e does it, right? And
Sure.
so you do actually sort of implicitly end up learning about Sarenrae, or I'm going to struggle to remember Pathfinder gods' names right now. The guy with the tankards. The guy
Yeah, Tankard Man. I know him.
Tankard Man, yeah, the guy.
Yeah.
Starts with
Mill
a
Tank.
C? He's got a C?
Kill Tank. That's
Kill Tank.
Omar desperately has. You people have things
Oh,
to
that's
say.
really
while
good.
Someone got it.
I'm not
Yeah.
Googling anything. Don't worry about it. Pathfinder.
I know it's not going to be
gods. Don't worry about
cantankerous,
it.
but I do want it to be cantankerous.
That would be very good if that was the answer.
Yeah.
Caden Kylian, thank you.
Rescued.
Metropolis again. Anyway, you get a lot of sort of implicit lore about the world through some class features, but then a lot of the classes are, fairly mechanically removed from that stuff as well.
Like I said, they're available for playtest now, both through the Paizo website and through Demiplane. So if you're interested in the Animist or the Exemplar, go check them out. Let's take 5 here, just for a moment. It's time to relax a little bit. Time to kick up our feet. Omar, you've had a busy day. You've drunk your dragon flavored coffee in the morning. Your coffee roast. You've had your breakfast from your D&D breakfast set. You've gone about your day, and now it's time. It's Friday night. It's time to kick back. Maybe, watch a movie, play some video games, relax, sit next to an open
I'm throwing on the
fire.
movie Scream. I don't know if that'll tie into this at all.
No, there you go. That could be perfect. And you're feeling a little, a little parched.
Yeah.
What sort of drink would you naturally reach for on such a relaxed evening?
Okay, so let's see. I have had my D&D coffee, you said. I had my D&D breakfast. I had my D&D luncheon. And now it's time for an evening beverage while I'm watching one of, if not my favorite horror film of all time, Scream. You know what? I feel like there's not one yet on the market, unless I'm incorrect, of a perfect D&D beverage to have.
Well, could I interest you in a little shot of Paladin, the latest whiskey from Quest's End, championed by Matthew Lillard, who is creating a line of D&D themed whiskeys called Quest's End.
I don't know why I didn't expect this to happen. With both of you here, just taking the longest time to set up the most mediocre bit in the world.
First of all, thank you, because that's a prized award. Second of all, at the top, Ben, you did say this is going to take about 5 minutes. I feel like I feel like you were warned at the top. The bottle looks really righteous. There's it's a beautiful looking bottle.
Can you use it as a mini?
Look, you can use it to track hit points. I don't advise that you use it to track hit points. Everybody drink responsibly. But there is a hit point tracker on the side of the bottle that tells you how much you're regaining if you drink more of the whiskey.
Regaining, which is interesting. I thought it was going to be losing, but I guess that's bad. That's bad branding. I do understand.
Yeah.
In AD&D, you would get hit points, but if you were intoxicated.
Oh, yeah.
I can understand having temp hit points.
Yeah. You would suffer penalties on various things, but you would gain hit points. Yeah,
Okay.
True story.
Okay. I don't know why I thought when you said it was going to have like a hit point tracker, I was like, okay, so it's going to have a thing on it that spins that you can spin the wheel to like
just dial down as you take. Yeah. It's for level 12 paladins, so it's a really big wheel.
The thing I pictured, I need you to understand, the thing I pictured was so not classy. I just looked up pictures and it's very classy looking. The thing I pictured was closer to that dice tower mug that they had for the D&D movie is closer to what I was picturing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. Nothing like. No, this is
I'll draw a picture of what I was thinking.
This is a gentle person's kind of drink. This is an evening relax class. You have it there next to your open fire with the light kind of pleasingly glittering through the bottle. It lights up the map that's on the back of the bottle that you can see through the whiskey bourbon that becomes clearer as you drink away. A premium embossed dragon head logo on the neck of the bottle, as well as a class logo that indicates whether you're drinking Paladin or one of the upcoming Rogue, Warlock, or Dragon classes. They named them, not me. It is. I was telling my wife this last night. She's like, "Why is it called Paladin?" And I said, "Actually, there's a reason." Because it's based, I believe,
and
on
he
the
said
characters.
It in your impression of Jeremy Crawford for some reason.
We don't do that here. It is based on the characters from Matthew Lillard's game, I believe, and their paladin was raised in fighting pits, and so this particular whiskey bourbon has it's characterized by notes of vanilla and fruit, with an undercurrent of spice that reflects the paladin's fighting spirit. So you will feel paladin-y while drinking it.
It's
just a real shit.
No, go ahead. I need to know what you're going to say.
No, it's so not important. I was going to say it's just a shame Matthew Lillard can't drink it without getting murdered. It's one of the 3 rules from...
Yep, that's
Scream.
very true.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I wonder if it burns like Divine Smite.
Ooh. That was good. Are you going to pick this up at pre-order in October, Shawn?
You assume I don't have some already.
Oh, you've got a hookup? So somebody brought it in their boot?
If you pulled up the bottle, I would have fainted. I would have been like, this is such a good setup.
You're not going to get me buying the kitschy stuff a lot, but I'm going to be buying this, yes, because whiskey good.
It's also, I'm really excited to see what the future flavor profiles are, because it being something that is specific to a character, I think is really cool.
I kind of hope now that I said bootleg before that the rogue one kind of comes like in a small flask or something.
Oh, that is
Yes.
That is sick. Yeah.
I feel like that's not classy enough for this brand of whiskey, but I could be wrong. I'm actually not a huge whiskey drinker, or if I do, I usually drown it in mixer, which did not work in the States because you do not have pour limits as laws. We were just drinking whole glasses of whiskey. But Shawn, Omar, possibly, Dael, I'm not sure. Do these specific flavor profiles excite you? Are you interested to, as Omar just said, kind of not just see what's coming up, but to try Paladin?
Perhaps.
Oh, a refined palate, I see.
Do they have Mad Dog 2020 in Australia?
Possibly. If they do, I'm not familiar.
Okay,
But I feel like I've heard that before.
You probably would clean the rust off your tools with it, but
oh, good.
That's sort of my.
I tried Malort for the first time.
Yeah. Yep.
Chicago's proudest. Yep.
The first and last time.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is the exact opposite of Malort. And I love Chicago with all my heart, but I struggle drinking it. But I'm excited. It sounds like they've taken a lot of care and consideration. It doesn't seem like something that they're like, oh, we can make money off of this. Let's just put it out there and slap a name on it. It really seems like they've taken time to make something that they want and that now we have access to. And so even if it's something that I'm like, oh, it's not my go-to, flavor of whiskey, I will be excited to taste something that people care about, and that's an extension of their game. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and it feels so like old school D&D nerd to do a thing and to make it be about your party and your home game, right?
Oh,
like
sure.
that's where we end up with so many of the like spell names with specific wizard characters' names in there. That's how we end up. There are like whole fantasy book series that were based on people's just home games. Like the concept of a thieves guild in fantasy arose from the fact that it existed in a D&D game and got carried over to, wasn't it like Ursula Le Guin or someone who was like, yeah, I'll just put that in my books now. And now it's like a standard trope of fantasy. And it's just like one of my favorite things when people just love their characters so much and their friends' characters so much that they're like, this whole thing I'm doing is going to be an ode to them. It's just the like sweetest thing to come out of nerd culture.
I agree, because I didn't take all their names down here, so I apologize to these folk, but this is a collaboration, it's not just Matthew Lillard, but it's also working with other people from Quest's End, Blue Run Spirits is the name of the whiskey company that are helping create this. They've gotten a specific sci-fi artist who's worked on D&D before to do the map that's on the back of the bottle. I don't know if these will be, here's that word, bespoke for each bottle, but it would be cool if they were. And so, yeah, this has been crafted by a couple of people.
Honestly, it'd even still be cool if they just had 5 different maps and you don't know which one you're going to get. I don't know.
Right,
I'm a sucker for that stuff.
So yeah, check it out. I think it's on pre-order now. Oh, the best bit of this. If you go to their website, which I believe is questsend.com, it could be Quest End's whiskey. If you just Google Quest End Paladin, you'll find it. And on their website is a Atmos player where you have different sliders for orcs fighting, rain, pub noises, and you can adjust the sliders for different and then turn it on and it just creates pub atmos for your D&D game. It's great. It's great. So if Sirenscape who? I've got Matthew Lillard fixing me up with his whiskey website.
And now also, whenever you all have to take a shot, when you say bespoke, you can take a shot of the whiskey.
There you go.
Perfect.
There you go. Perfect. Well, speaking of perfect things, our email address is perfect for this podcast. Here comes a bus. Omar, what's our email address?
Your email address is, I have it, it's podcast@ghostfiregaming.com.
Thank you so much. Podcast@ghostfiregaming.com, which is where you can reach out to if you want to ask us a question.
Omar managed to do that faster than we usually do.
I know. Yeah.
I had a feeling it would get thrown to me. I don't know why, but I had a feeling, and I was like, I know it off the top of my head, and then I went, no, that's too straightforward. It can't be that. And let me double check my notes.
That's exactly why I said, speaking of perfect, is because, if you needed an email for a Ghostfire podcast, it would be podcast@ghostfiregaming.com. Xena asking, speaking of classes, are there too many classes? They're asking about 5th edition specifically, but, this could, port to other games that have a wide selection of character customization, because the specific reason Xena is asking is They, in their experience, a large number of classes make it difficult for new players to choose a character because that kind of choice paralysis, which I experienced making my character for Baldur's Gate. I was like, what do I choose? Should 5e have a random character generator to help with players selecting classes when they're first playing the game, and do systems with less character customization or less choices prevent choice paralysis? Over to you.
I want to hear what Shawn has to say about it first. Yes.
Well, common sense says that if you are a player that likes a lot of choices, you want a game with a lot of choices. So you're going to draw in those kinds of players when you make a game that has a lot of those choices. That's not necessarily the best on-ramp for new players, especially. So here's what happens. We who are veteran, dedicated players, we get very excited about all the choices and all the stories and all the themes and all the things that you can do with the character creation. So when we teach new players, we sometimes want to say, well, you could play this and this and this and this, and this is what this is like, and this is what that's like. And you get all excited, and then you don't realize that an hour has passed and you're still describing all the options to the players. And most normal human beings would then be shying away from you, maybe moving slowly away so as not to startle you. And so we, as the veterans who are excited, have to sort of step back and look at it from a beginner's point of view. Someone who might not want to do 2 hours of research just to figure out what they might want to play. And I think we've talked about it before, where you can say, well, tell me a character from fantasy that you like, and then you can pick for the player. But even then, that's sometimes putting a lot on a new player, which is why I'm a big fan of either pre-generated characters that you can hand to someone to at least learn the basics first. If you can hook them that way, that will give them a more of an impetus to take the time to do the research on their own. The other way to do it is make a basic version of your game where choose from these 4 classes. And then when you get through that process, they are 3 steps along this 12-step process, so they know more about what's coming. And so there's so many. As a designer, there are so many nuances to that question. As a DM, there's so many nuances to that question that it's hard to tamp down your enthusiasm and step back and look at it. But that's what you as a game designer need to do.
Yeah, there's so much. It's tricky because I feel like the answer to the questions that have been posed is broadly yes, right? Does the large number of classes make it difficult for new players to choose a character? Yes, it does. Do systems with less character customization or less choices prevent choice paralysis? I think yes. It's one of those things where that is true, but there's also the flip side. The reason I was drawn to Pathfinder over D&D originally was because I didn't feel stifled by the lack of choices. It wasn't telling me, here's your short list of things that you can pick and you have to have one of these backgrounds or whatever. It was, no, you could build your own character through this very granular system where you choose your own skill proficiencies and you get, and you've got 1 million points to spread out across all of these million choices. And there is definitely an aspect to which I think that people do like being able to choose. And I think people do like breadth of choice. Even new players do like that. But at the same time, they don't have the language base that experienced players do. When we say ranger, they don't know what that means exactly. When we talk about the difference between a sorcerer and a wizard and a warlock, they don't have the grounding to know what that means. Rather than like a random character generator, the thing that I'm really genuinely hoping to see on D&D Beyond, particularly as we move into the D&D sort of official digital tabletop, is I would love to see a kind of quiz for new players, right? That takes you through just a narrative role play example, like goblins have attacked your town. It's like a level 0 character generator by just being like, through words only, goblins have attacked your town. What do you do? Do you sneak up behind them? Do you confront them directly? Do you whatever? And through these questions, it could try to figure out sort of a play style that you are likely to enjoy. And at the end, it gives you a character that's already statted up, that's like, here's a rogue for you to play. Here's a fighter for you to play. That sort of a thing I think would be really great. Because again, like Shawn said, pre-generated characters, I think to a certain extent get a bad rap. I think you can do a lot with them. I've had heaps of success creating stacks of pre-generated characters where I just write at the top like a I don't know, 5-word description of what that character is. I'm like, this is a half-elf barbarian, not even barbarian, because they don't have that language, right? I'm like, this is a half-elf bandit, right? I use words that they will know. This is a crime family spy who's a hobbit. You know, I use words that I know that the players are actually going to understand, and I give them this stack of papers to choose from. So they still get that feeling of choice, but you don't have to overwhelm them by saying, okay, and what subclass do you want? You know what I mean? It is one of those things where narrowing down choices can really take a lot of the pressure off, but still allowing choices lets your players feel like they do have agency in the character that they're playing.
Yeah, I really agree with that quiz idea. I feel like a lot of us come into games, I mean, we're speaking specifically about 5e, so I'll keep it to that. Like, a lot of us come into 5e wanting to tell stories, but also loving the back of the tapestry, and we like the mechanics. We like how things come together. It's kind of like there are people who are going to play in a playground, and there's people who play in a playground and go, hey, this is a pretty good playground. Like, this is a pretty good, oh, and the bridge leads to the slide, and oh, that's good. And then that goes to a pole that you have to climb up. Oh, I like this. We like the structure of it. And I think a lot of folks will get that taste for it, but it can be a little daunting at first to be like, here's a pile of pipes, make a playground. And so if it is almost like a mixologist's approach, like a really, like, let's use it again so we all take a shot, that like a bespoke mixologist being like, what are you interested in? But also, what mood are you in? Like, what kind of vibe are you into? One time a friend was leaving Los Angeles, was moving away, and we were at this hotel, and we asked the bartender, we're like, okay, make 3 drinks that are like inspired by Los Angeles. And he made 3 that were different regions and represented that. And we didn't get into like, oh, we're an egg yolk, we're an egg white, like, cocktail group, or we want this specific whiskey, or crushed ice versus a cube. It was the experience of it. And so I think that coming into it, leading with the experience, and having something that can pre-build for you based off of what you're in the mood for would be really cool. Because someone might come in being like, you know what, I do want a barbarian. And you're like, the things you want are actually a wizard, but you want to approach it from a place of emotion, which you think is strictly a barbarian thing. So we can build that into it. So like that, or I would say keeping, like Shawn, you were saying, we will talk for hours upon hours of like, well, this is cool and this is cool. For people who are just getting into it, if you have a limited amount of classes in the beginning and a ton of subclasses, you keep that excitement. And I think that we have this huge world we get to explore when you know a lot about it. But if you're just beginning, getting that drip feed of being like, here's 5. But from that 5, there's an entire universe for you to explore. Then folks who are just getting the taste of it get to be like, ooh, next week, can I talk about like maybe adding some spells? Like, absolutely. And the week after that, can I do like a sneak attack? Like, yes. Yeah, let's build that out. Whereas if you've been in it for a lot, you're like, I want 70 classes and I want to build them all into one character. I want to break a character build. But to get that feeling for someone who's just being introduced, I think that like a couple classes and a million subclasses is kind of a good way to approach it.
And because you're right as well, it's not the only choice point, right? Because you're coming in, you're choosing your character's lineage, you're choosing your character's class. In 5e, you're choosing your character's background. And those are all distinct choices that you can actually create a lot of different characters with even limited choices there. Again, I am someone who loves having a million choices. I am that person. But having said that, you look at something like Dragon Age, right? Where people don't generally feel like, oh, I'm stifled because I only have, a mage or warrior or rogue to choose from in classes, because you also end up getting background stuff from your specific race that you chose, or you end up getting stuff from, a couple decisions that you make at the beginning of the game, and it sort of snowballs from there. So you can end up with a lot of different, very specific feeling characters, even with only a few choices in each of those choice points.
Yeah. And there are several ways to design a game where you do exactly that. You make one choice, and hopefully for a brief amount of time, that becomes important. You learn about that, and then you're on to the next one. You're on to the next one.
Yes.
The issue then becomes, what do you do with the players who just want all the choices all at once because they're experts?
Yeah.
Do they skip the first 6 levels of this game, and is that okay? Have you designed it to be that way? But Dael, the thing that you asked for is already available. I put a link in the chat. It is available on D&D Beyond. It is called drumroll please, Before the Storm, and you are taught exactly what the game is, and you make choices as you go, and the link is there, so you can check it out.
This is incredible. Why aren't they talking about this all the time forever?
Isn't that the question? They have this great content there. They have all of these great programs.
The art is so cute.
And it's there.
What?
It was there all along. We had the technology.
My God.
Is it? I'm not going to try load it right now because I don't want to try and risk crashing my internet connection. But somebody pointed out it was I Only Roll Ones mentioned that the Judge Dredd tabletop RPG has like a life path system.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Witcher one does as well, and I believe Infinity does as well from the ones that I've touched. The Witcher one specifically, I think you choose your class before you go through the life path, so it doesn't necessarily help with that choice, but I think that, like, maybe it's a more complicated version of the basic quiz, but kind of, discussing who is your character outside of their, like, what's their job?
Yeah.
What do they, what do they do in a village, or did they grow up in a castle? Almost coming at it from the background is often the last thing you choose when you create a 5e character. Thinking about it more conceptually rather than rules heavy, but coming at the background first. I think someone even might have done this in a playtest, like Black Flag or something. That you choose background first, and then that might help inform the class that you're going to play as.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of times that I've gotten to the end on Beyond, and I've then selected a background, and I'm like, I'm going to try this out. That looks fun. Actually, I'm going to go back and rebuild this entire thing because that's a really good background feature. Yeah, the sheer amount of times that, like, I've been like, I wish background was kind of a leading thing.
It is wild when you think about the order that it is presented in the rulebook, right? Like, that's
And anyway, who are you? And you're like, wait, hold on. Yeah.
Well, I assume that's for, at a guess, backgrounds being new to 5e. It's almost that way around for a mechanical reason, because the background is just this extra kind of thing that latches onto your
well, I also think that
mechanically.
There's a kind of implicit language that we learn with lots of things. I know that I've said that about a different thing today already, but I'm talking about something new now. You go into a grocery store, and even if it's not a grocery store you've been to, usually there's a pretty similar layout. Or back in the day, they used to all have a pretty similar layout. You go to a department store, they all have a pretty similar layout. Like, you walk into any Kmart or Target, you go to the back right if you want, tech. That sort of a thing.
You go into an Aldi, they are carbon copies of each other. It is actually disorienting, right? Because you're like, I think I'm in a different suburb suddenly. Like,
and it would also often be true between different brands of grocery store, because that was just kind of a thing that you learn the flow of that, right? And now a lot of stores are trying to deliberately disrupt that, because they think that if you're disoriented and don't know where to find anything, that you'll buy more things, and it doesn't work, and I wish that they would stop. Anyway, but there's a similarity to that in any number of things, and one of those things is RPG rulebooks. So you look at particularly fantasy RPGs, tabletop RPGs, but also, you see it in a lot of the other ones. You get the character creation stuff at the front, and it will tend to be in the order of, like, the equivalent of race, species, lineage, whatever, and then it'll give you the classes, and then it'll, you know, move on to this other stuff. It'll want you to do, I don't know, ability scores before skills, and some of that stuff just makes sense, but some of that is just because that's the way that it's been done. And it is interesting to see places where it kind of actually flies in the face of usability, but that's just the way that it's done. And it's an interesting toss-up, right? Because if you're introducing a game where it's lore heavy and people need to know about the setting, it would make sense to put that stuff in front of the character creation stuff. But if you do that, it then becomes a book that people find more difficult to flip through quickly and navigate easily. So it's not even a very simple question of, well, we should put that at the start, because people will end up being frustrated that they can't just go straight to the front and find the character classes. You know what I mean? Having said that, I'm looking at this quiz on D&D Beyond that Shawn has sent through, and they do a very good job in terms of the first question is, I'm ready to choose my hero, or tell me more about the Forgotten Realms, right? And so you can click on tell me more, and it'll give you a little blurb. It's interesting that they tell you about fighters, rogues, wizards, and clerics, which are, of course, the 4 classic classes. And then you get to choose your hero, but it puts the lore first. If you want it, the lore is first. They do then get you to choose your character class, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, is the first question, what is your class? Is there a question somewhere in there about sweet rolls and what to do with a sweet roll?
Yeah, question number 2, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
How do you know yourself?
But you can click not sure if you don't know what class you're going to be. Not sure.
Okay. Man, I'm on a roller coaster.
Danger is afoot. How will you deal with it? I'll use my weapons. I'll use my magic. I'll use my wits. Quick, Ben, quick.
Wits.
Well.
Is that what we're doing now? Eldritch Lorecast makes a character?
You know how to stay 2 steps ahead of your opponent. Do you use your craftiness and skill, your encyclopedic knowledge and preparation, or your leadership and devotion?
Omar.
Leadership and devotion.
I'm throwing it to you.
Okay. You're a paladin.
Oh.
Just like Gandalf.
That's a great way to arrive at being a paladin. That's fun.
Someone points at you and you go,
I don't know, leadership. Yeah, paladin.
We have an absolutely, what I think personally is an absolutely banger email question, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to save it till next week. Apologies, Omar.
I can't wait to hear what it is next week.
So I'm going to steal a question from last week, a quicker question from last week, which is, have you ever tackled time travel? And I feel like we've got this question a few times. This came from I Only Roll Ones as well, who was watching last week. Have you ever tackled time travel in any of your campaigns? Did things go off the rails, or did it go well?
I did a Charles Dickens Christmas adventure where it was switching between present, future, and past.
Right.
And that went really well, and I loved it because it was just built in that whatever you did affected the other timelines or the other time periods. That was great. Another time, I allowed a player to go back in time to just fix one thing that he had done. And I assumed it would just be this time that he turned a little bear creature to dust by accident. But instead, on live Twitch, he went, I wish I never did any of this. And that was a moment when I went, okay, so time travel might be something we discussed beforehand then, because we just had to redo the entire show.
Yeah. All right. From Act 1 and everybody positions.
Everybody back to work. Everybody.
Yeah. So hey, at least you don't need to prep the campaign again.
I have not yet had time travel activate, but I'm ready for it at any time. I will say I provide more opportunities for forward time travel than backward time travel, because I think that is easier to do because it's great. It's fun. You get a glimpse of a dark future, and you get to use that when you come back to the present to try and influence the future. That's fine. That's easy. There ain't no unwishing realities in that circumstance.
And the longest campaign I've ever run both in terms of time and in terms of levels, was a 1 to 20 third. No, it was first edition. And the characters were there seeing this dragon basically destroying their world. And then they went back in time and they had to stop that from happening. And I told them at the end of the very first encounter, at the very first session, this is going to be important. What I'm describing and what you do and what you see is going to be important to the campaign. And 2 years later, enough of them remembered what happened in that session that they found the clues and were able to put things together and stop it when it started to happen again.
That's incredible. That makes really me cool. So happy. It also bears remarkable similarity to the plot of season 7 of Riverdale. Just so you know.
Oh, wow. I stopped after season Riverdale 6. 8. What can I say?
And who could blame you?
Isn't that just players remembering the context clues to then use them in game is just the warm hug of a GM for a GM. It's like, you paid attention. I think I've talked a few times about, I haven't done it yet, but wanting to run like a wizard's tower where there's a weird timey-wimey style thing going on, like I think in Titanfall and Dishonored 2, those video games both kind of featured it. I mean, love Omar with that idea of doing the Christmas Carol adventure with flashbacks, kind of. That's really clever. And I think if I was to try it, it would be in that isolated, like, it's either a one shot or a two shot, or it's a one area where something weird is happening with time, but it largely doesn't affect what happens outside of that location, outside of the time stream, if that makes sense. So like what happens there might affect the future of the party, but it's not going back to the past isn't going to affect, it's not going to change reality. As a way to kind of isolate it down. Speaking of time, we are out of it.
That's a pretty good one. I'll give you that.
That was a really good segue.
Yes. If you've enjoyed this, now I've such a good segue. I've forgotten the next part of the spiel.
Take a bow.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much if you've joined us on Twitch. If you want to come and hang out on Twitch, we are live Mondays. I never say the day. Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Tuesday, 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So come hang out, chat with us, chat with everybody else. Thank you if you've been hanging out there. If you're watching this on YouTube, on iTunes, on Spotify, all the good places, any podcast catcher, anywhere the number one podcast is, you can get it there. Thank you so much for listening there as well. I've dropped my pen. That doesn't matter. I've been Ben Byrne here with Dael Kingsmill, Shawn Merwin, Omar Najam, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. That just got the Muppet suddenly.